Greetings viewers and welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you how to make your own washes. But before I get started on doing that and explaining all the stuff I have in front of you, I need to put a little disclaimer out there and make sure that you understand this is not my recipe for making washes. I got the information that I'm going to show you in this video from Lester Bursley from Awesome Paint Job. If you're not already familiar with him, I'm going to put a link to his video on the section below so you can see his version of doing this. And you may be asking yourself, well, if that video is already out there, why not just point us to it and we can use his and be done with it? Because I'm going to be doing something a little bit differently. I'll explain that to you after I go through all the stuff that I've got here and what I'm going to be using to make it. So the first thing we have over here is Liquitex Matte Medium. This is a 32 ounce bottle. It's pretty big and heavy, the only size that I could find. Here we have Daler-Rowney ink. This is the sepia. It comes in several other different colors. I have some more Liquitex. This is Flow Aid. And over here we have a Target brand bottle of distilled water. It's a 1 gallon jug. I think it costs like maybe $1. Alright, so these are the things that I'm going to be using to make the wash out of. And again, like I said, this is going to be a little bit different from Lester Bursley's video because when he makes his washes, he mixes them into 1 ounce bottles like this one. Small standard size you get in some of your craft paints and other things you might be using while you're modeling or painting your models. What I'm going to be using to make wash today is a 48 ounce container, and I'm going to be making 40 ounces of wash. So you might be asking, what the heck do I need 40 ounces of wash for? Well, that kind of goes back again, if you've been watching my previous videos, to the fact that I'm kind of lazy and I am very impatient and try to do things quickly. So instead of taking forever and using, a little tiny Citadel bottle of wash and dipping in and out with the brush and letting it kind of dry up and evaporate while I'm working with it, putting it on the models, taking maybe 20 minutes to wash a large tyrannid organism, making sure I get all the spots underneath, arms and appendages and spikes and plates and everything else they've got going on, I can be lazy and use this thing. So got my container, got it filled with wash. This is a 48 ounce container. Obviously I don't want to fill it to the top because if I start dunking stuff in here, the displacement's going to make it spill everywhere and that's going to be a big waste. So I've decided that I'm going to stop at 40 ounces and hopefully that should give me enough space. Mr. Hive Tyrant here that I've got ready for washing is going to be our test subject once I've got this wash mixed up in the jug here. And all I'm going to do to wash him, rather than sit there again for 20 minutes painting him with a brush the normal way, I'm just going to take him, dunk him in my wash, swish him around a little bit, take him out, shake off any excess drops, and let him dry. And he should be washed. Hopefully, it's not going to make too much of a mess. It's not going to be running everywhere. I'm going to do my best to, again, make sure it looks normal when it comes out. And hopefully, we're not going to screw this up too bad. So I'll just explain what I'm going to be doing as far as how much of what I'm going to be mixing. And I'm going to do that off camera because I'm probably going to make a mess and it's a little bit hard to navigate here in front of the camera and do that. So at least I'll be able to explain to you what I'm doing, and when I come back we'll try it out. So doing the conversion from 1 ounce to 40 ounces is still going to be the same ratio of everything. It's obviously just going to be on a lot larger of a scale. So the way Lester makes his washes, he initially does a 10-to-1 ratio of distilled water to the Flow Aid. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to use 20 ounces of distilled water and 2 ounces of Flow Aid. Now I don't have any ounce measuring cups or anything that measures in ounces, so I'm having to use my wife's conversion chart from the fridge here and get this, make sure I do it right. So if I need 10 ounces, 1 cup is equal to 8 ounces, so there's part of it. And 1/4 cup is equal to 2 ounces. So there's my 10 right there. So all I'm going to do is use both of these twice of distilled water, pour them into my container. Then again, now I only need 2 ounces to my 20 ounces of distilled water for the Flow Aid. Using again the handy dandy conversion chart, 2 tablespoons is equal to 1 ounce. So here's my tablespoon measuring. I'm just going to need this 4 times. Flow Aid poured into the distilled water inside of my giant container of wash. So once I've got that added in there, I'm then just going to need 20 ounces of the matte medium. Again, to get the half mixture with the distilled water Flow Aid. So again, I'm going to go back to my 1 cup and my 1/4 cup, and I'm going to use that twice to put that much matte medium inside of my container. I'm going to then kind of swirl around, make sure it all mixes up. I want to do the distilled water first because the matte medium's a little thick, it'll make it a lot easier to stir around. And again, when I come back, you'll see that on camera before I start stirring. The biggest part about this whole thing that's going to be kind of a pain to get right and make sure I do it properly is putting the drops of ink into that liquid mixture there. When he uses a 1 ounce bottle, I believe he uses about 40 drops of this ink. Well, 40 drops converted from 1 ounce to 40 ounces, I'm going to need 1,600 drops. I highly doubt you're going to want to watch me count out 1,600 drops on camera. It's probably going to take me a little while, and I'll probably be punching myself in the head wondering why I decided to do this, trying to keep track of everything, keeping track of all the drops that I'm putting in there. So that's going to be a little bit interesting. I'm kind of wondering how that's going to turn out. But that's all I'm going to do to mix this stuff. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put the distilled water, the flow aid, and the matte medium into the container, and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like before I start stirring it around, and then I'm going to get to the mind-numbing drops of ink going into the container. Alright, well, it's a good thing that I didn't film me doing that, because as stated, I did make a mess, and my wife would probably watch this just to find out why I was using the measuring cups, and she probably wouldn't be too happy. Luckily, I was able to clean everything up, but as you can see in front of you, I got all my stuff mixed up here. I've got my 20 ounces of distilled water mixed with 20 ounces of matte medium and 4 ounces of flow aid. So it just looks like a big jug of milk. All I'm going to do is I've got some of these little bamboo skewer things. I'm just going to stir it up to make sure it's all well mixed. Like I said, the matte medium stuff is really thick. It's kind of gloopy. I just watered it down quite a bit when I mixed it with the the distilled water. So I'm just going to stir this up quite a bit, make sure I've got it all thoroughly stirred, and then I'm going to go jump into dripping my ink into there. Like I said, 1,600 drops is quite a bit. I'm still not sure how I'm going to keep track of all that without losing count. Hopefully I don't get interrupted. Somewhere around there, and I'll start kind of testing it a little bit till I get the color just right. I may even need more than that, depending on the concentration. Again, I've never done this before, so we'll see how it turns out. This is kind of a test, and since I don't have enough materials to do this multiple times, that's kind of an on-screen test you guys get to be witness to. So this is the 6.08 US fluid ounce version. It does not have a dropper in the lid. When Lester does his, he's got this, I guess it's a smaller, like a squat looking version that's a little bit wider than this bottle. This one doesn't have a dropper, so I'm going to have to use my little pipette here and start counting out my drops as I put it into the container there. Now again, I don't want to bore you with that on camera, so I'm going to go ahead and just get counting and dropping stuff in there, and again I'll come back and show you what it looks like. I'll mix it up some more, and then we'll move into our test model once I make sure that I've got the color just right. Alright, so here's my wash after I've added the ink to it. I did a little bit of creative math with my dropper and a medicine cup like you'd get with a bottle of cough syrup. I just basically counted out how many drops came out of the dropper to at least the bottom line on it, which was 5 milliliters, and did a little bit of math. And with instead of 1,600 drops, I came out that I needed 100 milliliters of ink. So I went ahead and used the measuring cup to count that out. Made it go a lot faster than I was expecting to count out drops. I'm just stirring in the ink now, making sure I get a nice good mixture. Some of the matte medium is kind of sticking on the sides a little bit, so I'm having to just kind of knock it off of there and swirl it into the mix. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get some my other stuff, my Tyranid stuff that's painted that same brown color, and I'm just going to kind of do a comparison between this and the sepia wash until I can get it at least close enough. I'm not expecting to be an exact match. I might be here for a week trying to do that. As you can see, there's a little bit of space left between the top of the liquid and the top of the container. Again, what that'll do for me, number one, is if I start dunking stuff in here, it's not going to spill out over the sides because of the displacement of the object that I'm pushing in it. Kind of like people do every year when they try and deep fry a turkey and make a big mess and cause a fire. And the other thing too is this looks really thick right now. I mean, looking at the color on the stick is not too bad, but the material itself looks really thick and kind of, I don't know how it's going to turn out. So if I do need to thin it out a little bit, I always have a little bit of a buffer there, so maybe I can pour some more distilled water in or something and thin it out just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and try and figure out what my how close I am on the sepia wash that I normally use, so that my army doesn't end up looking like two different colors. And then we'll go ahead and do my test subject hive tyrant here and give him a little wash bath and see what we can get out of it. See how well my idea is going to work, and hopefully it won't blow up in my face. Alright, so I'm back here at the sink ready to dip my hive tyrant in the wash mixture that I've created. Now, if you can see the top of the container there, it's a little bit closer to the top than it was when I left the camera previously. The mixture that I had is very, very dark. It almost looks more like a mud wash than a sepia. I think I probably put too much of the ink in there. If anybody at home is watching this is planning on maybe trying something a little bit similar, I'd probably recommend, so instead of putting the 100 milliliters of ink, I probably should have stopped at 50 and just checked it, kind of swirled it around, tested it a little bit, see what it looked like before I kept going, because the problem is inks are very, very thick and heavy on the color. That's why they're a little bit different than washes. And that they're a little bit more potent. So probably having a little bit more, it's kind of even harder to thin it down. I put in quite a bit more water and flow aid in the matte medium just to kind of thin it out a little bit, and it almost hasn't even changed color. So I'm probably just going to have to use it for a little while until I can get the level lower, and then maybe put some more of that stuff in there to thin it out, and perhaps get it a little bit back closer to more of a sepia than a brownish. It is still pretty thin enough. I mean, as long as it's not globbed on the area, it should still provide the same effect. I was messing around with one of my other brown models just to check it. It's not too far off as long as I don't use it on the same model with the other sepia color. It shouldn't stand out too bad. Even standing amongst the other models, it should blend in. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and just jump into it and try and dip Mr. Hive Tyrant here. The only thing he needs now is his coat of wash and green highlights, and he'll be ready to go. I've got a glove on because I really don't feel like having my hand stained for a couple days by the ink if it decides not to wash off. So all I'm going to do is take him, dip him in there, swirl him around a little bit, take him out. It's going to be dripping, obviously. I'm going to let most of it drip back in the container. Before you do anything like this, you want to clean the model off. I always have kind of a real flimsy, thick brush. Yes, most of my models sit on my shelf for a little while and it gets dusty in the house. I'll just kind of brush them off and I go over the whole thing. Or you can use canned air in a brush. Sometimes the air may not reach into some of these little hard to get places, which also are, again, part of the reason I was talking about doing this with wash, is trying to get my brush jammed in there behind the head and up under some of the body cavities. It gets a little difficult and kind of frustrating. You don't get it all in there. So this method should help me out and make sure that I get everything coated. Also, one of the things you're going to run into, certain areas, such as like the little tendon in his foot there where it creates that pocket. Just like when you blew bubbles as a kid out of a little bottle, when you dip the thing in and pull it out, there's going to be a real thin like layer there of the liquid. So you don't want that there, just like if you were washing by hand anyway. So you still have to go over the model, and there might be, runoff. So especially if I'm holding him upside down, there's going to be areas on the skin where it's going to pool because that's where it's sitting due to gravity. It's all going to run to that area. You take your wash brush and kind of go through and just knock some of that off. You're going to have to keep an eye on it a little bit, but at least it'll be a lot quicker again than doing every little square inch of your model by hand. So without further ado, he's going to go take a bath. I'm going to just dip the whole thing all the way down, work them around just to make sure there's no air pockets in there, nothing in there is catching and keeping it from getting coated. I'm going to shake them off a little bit, kind of dripping everywhere all over the counter. You can see it's really pooled up in like the arm sockets and all the little crevices on him, his neck. I mean, it's got some air bubbles. Just like regular washing, again, all you do is just blow and get rid of those. Little tendon area in the foot, like I said, just kind of blow it out. Should knock the material off. Just kind of shake them a little bit. Get off most of the excess so it, again, doesn't pool up and dry extremely thick to the point where now the model's a different color rather than just kind of shaded a little bit. And there you have it, one washed Hive Tyrant. Obviously all I have to do now is wait for him to dry before I can do anything else, but you can see it already pooling in some of the little highlighted areas on his skin, on his face. Everything's starting to stand out already. It only took a couple seconds to dip him rather than several minutes painting him by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and set this guy aside, let him dry. We'll come back, take a look at him when he's done. So the Hive Tyrant has dried. Obviously he's the one on the right. Main difference between that one and the other one I have is obviously the other one is highlighted and based already. But for the most part, it's actually not too bad or too far off. It seems actually more like it's a little thinner than the one that was brushed before. There's also a little bit of detail difference in the one on the left here. It is a fine cast model. The texture of the model was a lot more rough, so I think it had a little bit more ridges and stuff for the wash to stand out and stick to versus the smooth plastic over here painted, such as especially on the tail there. It's a little bit shaded. It's about the right color that I wanted, so actually being darker didn't come out too bad. One of the things I did notice though, where I kind of made a pretty big mistake, the conversion for the amount of inks that I needed to use. Just looking around and playing with my stuff while I was waiting for him to dry, I looked at one of my paint bottles and realized that this bottle is actually a 2-ounce bottle. It's not a 1-ounce bottle. So that kind of made a huge difference when it came time to do the conversion for the drops. Obviously, since I was only doing 40 ounces, the 20 and 20, splitting it in half was about right, because all he does is split that bottle in half and make his mixture. But then when it came time for me to do the math to calculate the drops, it actually ended up being way too many. So when I said I would recommend stopping at 50 milliliters of ink, I probably needed to stop there anyway, because that's where mathematically it should have come out to if I had done it correctly. But again, even though I did mess up a little bit on the math and the ink, the amount of ink that goes into it, it did come out looking not too bad. Some of the areas may be a little bit thinner again in color and maybe not as dark, but it will still blend in and work just fine. All I got to do is throw some highlights on him and he'll match the rest of my army just fine, and I can keep on trucking with the rest of my models. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you found this information useful. If you guys decide to try this on your own, let me know what you come up with. Let me know how it works for you, and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.